Evolution. Definition. Organic evolution is a theory that the first living organism developed from lifeless matter. Then, as it reproduced, it is said it changed into different kinds of living things, ultimately producing all forms of plant and animal life that have ever existed on this earth. All of this is said to have been accomplished without the supernatural intervention of a creator. Some persons endeavor to blend belief in God with evolution, saying that God created by means of evolution, that he brought into existence the first primitive life forms, and that then higher life forms, including man, were produced by means of evolution. Not a Bible teaching. Is evolution really scientific? The scientific method is as follows. Observe what happens based on those observations. Form a theory as to what may be true. Test the theory by further observations and by experiment, and watch to see if the predictions based on the theory are fulfilled. Is this the method followed by those who believe in and teach evolution? Astronomer Robert Jastrow says, to their chagrin, scientists have no clear cut answer because chemists have never succeeded in reproducing nature's experiments on the creation of life out of non living matter. Scientists do not know how that happened. The Enchanted Loom, Mind in the Universe, New York, 1981, page 19. Evolutionist Lauren Isley acknowledged, after having chided the theologian for his reliance on myth and miracle, science found itself in the inevitable position of having to create a mythology of its own, namely the assumption that what, after long effort, could not be proved to take place today had, in truth, taken place in the primeval past. The Immense Journey, New York, 1957, page 199. According to New Scientists, an increasing number of scientists, most particularly a growing number of evolutionists, argue that Darwinian evolution theory is no genuine scientific theory at all. Many of the critics have the highest intellectual credentials. June 25, 1981, page 828. Physicist H. S. Lipson said, the only acceptable explanation is creation. I know that this is anathema to physicists, as indeed it is to me, but we must not reject the theory that we do not like if the experimental evidence supports it. Physicians Bulletin, 1980, volume 31, page 138. Are those who advocate evolution in agreement? How do these facts make you feel about what they teach? The introduction of the centennial edition of Darwin's Origin of Species, London, 1956, says, as we know, there is a great divergence of opinion among biologists, not only about the causes of evolution, but about the critical process. This divergence exists because the evidence is unsatisfactory and does not permit any certain conclusion. It is therefore right and proper to draw the attention of the non scientific public to the disagreements about evolution. By W. R. Thompson, then director of the Commonwealth Institute of Biological Control, Ottawa, Canada. A century after Darwin's death, we still have not the slightest demonstrable or even plausible idea of how evolution really took place, and in recent years this has led an extraordinary series of battles over the whole question. A state of almost open war exists among the evolutionists themselves, with every kind of evolution sect urging some new modifications. See Booker, London Times writer, The Star, Johannesburg, April 20th, 1982, page 19. Scientific magazine Discover said, evolution is not only under attack by fundamentalist Christians, but is also being questioned by reputable scientists. among paleontologists, scientists who study the fossil record. There is growing dissent. October 1980, page 88. What view does the fossil record support? Darwin acknowledged if numerous species have really started into life at once, the fact would be fatal to the theory of evolution. Origin of Species, New York, 1902, Part 2, page 83. Does the evidence indicate that numerous species came into existence at the same time, or does it point to gradual development, as evolution holds? How sufficient fossils been found to draw a sound conclusion? Smithsonian Institution scientist Porter Keir says there are 100 million fossils, all cataloged and identified in museums around the world. By the aid of fossils, paleontologists can give now us an excellent picture of the life of past ages. New York, 1956, Richard Carrington, Mentor Edition. What does the fossil record actually show? The Bulletin of Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History pointed out Darwin's theory of evolution has always been closely linked to evidence from fossils, and probably most people assume that fossils prove a very important part of the general argument that is made in favor of Darwinian interpretations of the history of life. Fortunately, this is not strictly true. The theologic record did not, and did not, then, and still does not yield a finely graduated chain of slow and progressive evolution. January 1979, Volume 50, Number 1, page 22 and 23. A view of life states, beginning at the base of the Cambrian period and extending for about 10 million years, all the major groups of skeletonized invertebrates made their first appearance in the most spectacular rise in diversity ever recorded on our planet. California, 1981, Salvador E. Loria, Stephen J. Gould, Sam Singer, page 649. Paleontologist Alfred Romer wrote, below this Cambrian period, there are vast thickness of sediments in which the progenitors of the Cambrian forms would be expected, but we do not find them. These older beds are almost barren of evidence of life, and the general picture could reasonably be said to be consistent with the idea of a special creation at the beginning of Cambrian times. Natural History, October 1959, page 467. Zoologist Harold Coffin states, if progressive evolution from simple to complex is correct, the ancestors of these full-blown living creatures in the Cambrian should be found, but they have not been found, and scientists admit there is little prospect of their ever being found. On the basis of the fact alone, on the basis of what is actually found in the earth, the theory of a sudden creative act in which the major forms of life were established fits best. Liberty, September, October 1975, page 12. Carl Sagan, in his book Cosmos, candidly acknowledged the fossil evidence could be consistent with the idea of the great designer. New York, 1980, page 29. Might it be that the evolutionary process took place as a result of mutations? That is, sudden drastic changes in genes? Science Digest states, evolutionary revisionists believe mutations in key regulatory genes may be just the genetic jackhammers their quantum leap theory requires. However, the magazine also quoted British zoologist Colin Patterson as stating, speculation is free. We know nothing about these regulatory master genes. February 1982, page 92. In other words, there is no evidence to support the theory. The Encyclopedia Americana acknowledges the fact that most mutations are damaging to the organism seems hard to reconcile but the view that mutation is the source of raw materials for evolution. Indeed, mutants illustrated in biology textbooks are a collection of freaks and monstrosities, and mutation seems to be a destructive rather than a constructive process. What about those 8 men depicted in school books, encyclopedia, and museums? The flesh and hair on such reconstructions have to be filled in by resorting to the imagination. Skin color, form, and distribution of the hair, the form of the features, and the aspect of the face. Of these characters, we know absolutely nothing for any prehistoric men. The Biology of Race, New York, 1971, James C. King. The vast majority of artists' conceptions are based more on imagination than on evidence. Artists must create something between an ape and a human being. The other specimen is said to be the more ape-like they make it. Science Digest, April 1981, page 41. Just as just as we are slowly learning the primitive men are not necessarily savages, so we must learn to realize that the early men of the Ice Age were neither brute beasts, nor semi-apes, nor cretins. Hence the infallible stupidity of all attempts to reconstruct Neanderthal or even Peking Man, God and Magic. New York, 1961. Evar Listener, page 304. Do not textbooks present evolution as fact? Many scientists succumb to the temptation to be dogmatic. Over and over again, the question of the origin of the species has been presented as if it were really settled. Nothing could be further from the truth, but the tendency to be dogmatic persists, and it does not serve to the cause of science. The Guardian, London, England, December 4th, 1980, page 15. But it is reasonable to believe that everything on this earth was created in 6 days. There are some religious groups that teach that God created everything in six 24-hour days, but that is not what the Bible says. Galatians 1 3 through 31 tells how God prepared the already existing earth for human habitation. It says that this was done during a period of 6 days. But it does not say that these were 24-hour days. It is not unusual for a person to refer to his grandfather's day, meaning that one entire lifetime. So too, the Bible often uses the term day to describe an extended period of time. 2 Peter 3:8. Thus, the days of Genesis chapter 1 could reasonably be thousands of years long.